You all know how Grim eats up those blot crystals like they're his last meal, and how each one of them has a very specific flavor that Grim so eloquently details. Y'all also know how we have a candy specific to each twist boy that we can get from alchemy classes. Do you guys think that these candies have very specific flavors which Grim could also eloquently detail should he get his paws on them? Such thoughts had recently been expressed with slightly different words in our Discord suggestion box, and it really got me thinking. So today we'll be talking about what flavors I think each of the boys' candies might be. This is purely speculation, as the flavor text for the candies doesn't actually list any flavors, which is disappointing. So take everything I say with a grain of salt. Also, we'll be talking about some EN server story content, including events and vignettes, so consider this your spoiler warning. Now then, I think it's only fair that we start with our resident gourmet Grim and his paw candy, which I think could taste like nothing other than tuna. I do not think this is a good flavor for candy, but I do think it's a flavor that Grim enjoys, and since his life basically revolves around food and tuna specifically, I can't imagine his candy tasting like anything else. I guess if I had to pick an appetizing flavor, then I'd go with blueberry, just because it's the least offensive of the neon blue candy flavors, and sometimes I think Grim's eyes look like blueberries, so there's that. Now, the flavor doesn't necessarily have to match the color of the candy, I don't think, since the colors are more so representations of the dorms. But I think in Grim's case, because his fire is blue and his eyes are blue and his house is blue and his windows are blue and his Corvette is blue and the trees are blue, he's gonna get blueberry. Moving right along to Riddle, we've got a rose-shaped candy that my brain just can't see as being anything other than rose flavored. Like, if I picked this up and it was peach, I'd be severely disappointed. So, rose it is. I think the connection to Riddle is also very clear here, given all of the rose references surrounding him. You've got the rose gardens, the roses on his overblot, the rose thorns also in his overblot, his last name being Rose Hearts, his dedication to all of the rules, even those including roses, him being knighted with the rose corsage in his suitor suit vignette, and being likened to a rose by Malleus during that process. It's just all roses. Also, every time I have had a rose flavored sweet, it's been very mild in the sweetness department and stronger in the floral one, which I think works well for Riddle. I have a feeling that he may like sweets a lot, but given his upbringing, he may not be able to eat a lot of them or eat ones that are overly sweet. So, this candy being more subtle seems about right. I also think it would be pretty cute for him to share candies with Trey because Trey's favorite food is violet candies. So rose is not quite the same thing, but it's in that floral vein, and I think the two of them potentially like swapping things from time to time would be kind of cute. Speaking of Trey, there are probably a variety of flavors that would suit him given his baking talents, but I think, again, in that swippy swappy vein, it would be extremely cute for his candy to be strawberry flavored. I know that strawberries are more of a Riddle thing, but Riddle was introduced to strawberry tarts by Trey, and it's likely a tart that his family is very good at, or at least sells a lot of, since they keep it in the window display. We also get to see in Trey's labware vignette that he's raising strawberries and experimenting with making them sweeter or fruitier or what have you for his culinary pursuits. And again, I think it would just be so cute for Trey to give some of his clover candies to Riddle, ones that he, doesn't need. And perhaps in doing so, he could bring Riddle out of a bad mood or, placate him a little bit, maybe. I don't know. I could also see Riddle eyeing them occasionally and Trey just indulging him, which would be kind of funny. I don't know if it would be a good thing, but I think if we do have them swap candies, then it might be a little bit more even. But I don't know, this idea just popped into my head and it seemed fitting for the two of them. So that's why I decided to give them their respective flavors. Now for Cater, our bubbly social media star, I can envision his candy being watermelon flavored, but only if that watermelon is smothered in chamoy. It's spicy, sweet, tangy, and oh so delicious. Plus, the spiciness of the chamoy would likely make it more palatable for Cater, since he doesn't really like sweet things. I'm sure there are other kinds of chili candies out there, and maybe the diamond candy is more akin to just pure chili powder mixed into a sugar base to just make it a spicy little treat for Cater. I think that could work for him as well, but I think adding in the watermelon here creates a duality which suits Cater's overall actions and vibe. Sure, he's bubbly and extroverted, but he also has a more contemplative and broody side, so his candy having a very sweet, fun, bubbly flavor like watermelon combined with the spiciness of the chamoy, gives it a duality that I think resonates with this aspect of his character. Deuce, though, is going to get an unconventional flavor for a candy, I think anyways, but it's a flavor he'd appreciate for sure, and that's egg custard. I've never had an egg custard flavored confectionery, but I have had egg custards before, and they're really, really good. Given that Deuce loves eggs so much, it just makes sense for his candy to also be egg flavored in some capacity, given that there are, in fact, egg sweets, unlike Grimm's tuna. So Deuce has at least that going for him. I also think this flavor might be an acquired taste to some, which can be likened to his delinquent side in a way. Maybe. Somehow. But the sweetness of the custard suits Deuce's overall personality, which I think is a good connection to end his section on. Ace also has a favorite food that works really well for a candy, so I think I'll be kind to him today and say that I think his candy is flavored like cherries. Ace loves cherries, his candy is red, and that's a good enough connection for me. Cherries also have this overwhelmingly positive energy in my mind because of pop art, which I think suits Ace's extroverted showmanshipy nature. It's bright, charismatic, cheerful, and tasty, so Ace just lucked out here. Now then, for Leona, I am also going to be kind and say that his candy is flavored like baobab. If you've played through the Cloud Calling on the Savannah event, you would probably know why, but if not, let me fill you in. There's a scene in the market where moody Mr. Leona walks off to get some candies, which piques the curiosity of our group. Neji kindly informs us that the candies are baobab flavored and have been a favorite of Leona since he was a child, which spurs the group to try out a few of the sweets for themselves. I think it's a fitting flavor, and I even think it fits the color scheme of the Savannah Claw candies because baobab juice is a yellow-orange too. It's a bit pale, but mixed with some honey or sugar, it could take on a deeper hue, probably. For Ruggie, I had a difficult time narrowing down a flavor for him because what could possibly suit the embodiment of a hustler? Blood, sweat, and tears? That's gross. So instead, he's getting pineapple, which is also a little tangy, but much more palatable and a lot less metallic. Depending on how ripe the fruit is, it can be delightfully sweet or incredibly bitter. And I think Ruggie's one that you've gotta ripen, so to speak, before he's sweet to you, if that makes sense. Give and take only works if both folks are giving and taking, right? So you better sweeten the pot before you can expect anything in return, especially from this little hyena. But Ruggie's also hardworking and dedicated. He's not so unreasonable, and even pineapple that's not fully ripe can still be enjoyed. Although I also feel like Ruggie would indulge in any sort of flavor. Honestly, he's probably just happy to have the candy. So I can't imagine him turning his nose up at pineapple. And I do think it kind of fits his hustling nature a little bit. So that's that for him. Jack. Jack, cactus, cactus, Jack. Therefore, this little wolf candy is going to taste like prickly pear cactus. This is actually a really lovely and refreshing flavor that's the good mix of berries, not that stupid wild berry stuff, combined with some melon flavors, which create a lovely fruity concoction that's also a little tart. Jack is a sweetheart, but he doesn't want that to be known for some reason, so he bristles a lot like a cactus, right? But once you get below the surface, you can see his good qualities and he becomes a bit more palatable. Although you do have to put in some work to get to that fruit. And cacti are similar in that regard. You gotta be careful of the spikes and peel off the skin to get to the fruit of the prickly pear, but the reward is fantastic and definitely worth it, and I feel the same way about Jack. So that's his flavor. Moving on to Azul. So for Azul, I decided to go with lavender for his candy flavor because I really just associate this moniker with the color that is heavily represented in Octavanel's dorm color scheme, particularly in the candies. So I think having Azul's be lavender flavored would just make sense and tie him even more strongly to the dorm. Plus, having this sort of floral flavor suits Azul's delicate but refined palate, I think. He's a man of the finer things with his fancy suit and cane and hundreds of hallmark shoes, so a flavor that reflects his intentional dedication to this aesthetic just kind of clicked for me. Sure, there are probably fancier flavors out there, but I think the calming effects of lavender also suit Azul. He tries to lull you in, make you feel safe, become your friend, all so that he can exploit you. but he's never going to be outright about that. And I think perhaps having him likened to lavender kind of suits this mask that he puts on, because lavender is a very calming plant. It's very enticing. It like lets you lower your guard. And that's exactly what Azul wants. On the other side of the coin, Azul is also fairly anxious, so I think having a lavender flavored sweet that he could snack on to help him calm down would also be kind of nice for him, so that he could stop worrying about everyone trying to take advantage of him all of the time. But, you know, maybe he just likes flowers. Who's to say? Now, Jade's candy has a very unique flavor, one that I have to name drop a brand for because I don't know how else to describe it, and I think mountain herbs isn't a full enough descriptor to accurately represent the flavor profile I'm envisioning. From my seat, the flavor of this candy would have to be the completely not sponsored or affiliated at all Jägermeister flavor. The unique blend of 56 herbs and other spices does contain some ingredients that are forageable or at least mountain adjacent. And Jade's obsession with the mountains is a pretty core part of his character. I think he'd have a lot of fun trying to decipher which herbs are in his candy concoction, and he might even go out to forage them to try to recreate the flavor on his own. Of course, the candy would be non-alcoholic, and if you've never had or cannot consume this beverage, the closest thing is probably the also completely not sponsored in any way, Ricola Cough Drop. It's similar enough, but not quite the same, still having a variety of mountain and other herbs as ingredients, and it's much more candy than liquor. But Jaeger has more of a licorice edge to it that I think suits Jade's vibe a little bit more, so that is why I pegged him in that specific box, but Ricola also works too. Floyd, though, is getting the mystery flavor because I have no idea what he would like, and also he changes his moods very frequently, so boxing him into just one thing doesn't really cut it. I think the allure of the mystery flavor would really draw Floyd in, and I think that each and every time he had one of these candies, he'd be convinced that it tastes different, even though it's not actually changed. But that way he wouldn't get bored of them too quickly, and I think he would always be looking forward to trying to figure out what the latest one tastes like. I can't tell you what the actual flavor of the mystery flavor is, just in case Floyd were to catch wind of it and become disinterested in these candies. So I'm just gonna let y'all rely on your own imaginations to kind of figure out what flavor the mystery flavor is for him. Kalim now is totally going to have coconut flavored candy, and I love that for him. This guy drinks way too much coconut water for me to justify giving him any other flavor, and I truly don't think anything else would suit him here. Coconut's honestly a very lovely candy flavor, well, if you like coconut anyways. And it can be refreshing too, which totally matches Kalim's vibe and special magic. I feel like poor Jamil is probably sick of these things though, since he likely has to poison test each package for Kalim, unless of course he's the one making the candies. Maybe he is. I'm not sure. But if Jamil was the one making the candies, he'd likely be picking this flavor anyways because it's a safe bet that Kalim's gonna like it and eat it. I also think that Kalim would be happy to share these candies with others too, as he does with pretty much everything else. But it would be a bit more fun since it's also a piece of something he likes, so that's what I decided on for him. Now then, moving on to Jamil, he gave me a little bit of trouble in a similar way as Kader because I feel like Jamil is someone who likes spice more than sweet, and he even goes so far as to pick a particular dish in Tapis Rouge because it has spices in it and he wants to compare it to the Scalding Sands cuisine. So when thinking of a fitting candy flavor for him, I ultimately decided on cinnamon, which is a spice, but it also works really great in candies. I think this would be a flavor that Jamil could appreciate and perhaps enjoy in his off time. And some kinds of curries also use cinnamon as one of their main spices, and since Jamil's favorite food is curry, I think it could work out quite well. These types of candies typically have a punch to them, and since they're red, they can sometimes get confused with cherry candies, which makes their flavor even more exciting when you finally discover it. Jamil is someone who can be a bit sassy in the same sort of way, and I think on the surface you don't expect too much from him, but then when you actually get to meet him and understand what's going on, Boy oh boy does he pack a punch. So as far as I'm concerned, cinnamon is a really fitting candy flavor here. Okay, so Vill's not really one to indulge in sweets that often, so his candy is likely sugar-free. And while that has nothing to do with its actual flavor, I did think it was worth mentioning. Flavor-wise though, I imagine that the crown candy oddly enough tastes like cucumber and mint, as wild as that flavor is for a candy. Cucumbers are very low-calorie snacks that give water a flavor, but it's also something that I associate with spas since they often get used in advertisements as eye patches during treatments. I consider this food really health conscious, and I grow them almost every year in my garden, turning them into juice or ice pops with a tinge of lemon in the summer. So having them be a candy flavor isn't that far-fetched to me. The juice is very refreshing, and I think Vil would appreciate that sort of thing being represented in the crown candy. And I think the mint piece would also help this confection act as like a breath mint or something too, which totally works well for Vil's overall brand. Mint is very strong on its own, so I didn't want to give Vil that flavor alone, but I do think it would add a bit of a zing to the cucumber that Vil could appreciate, while being somewhat practical for his, overall branding. Rook's candy, though, is completely and inexplicably guava flavored. I really cannot tell you why I feel this way at all, but when I thought about those little green guava candies that you get sometimes from restaurants, my brain immediately went to Rook and offered no further explanation, so I also cannot provide an explanation here. There's just an energetic connection between these two that my mere mortal brain simply cannot find the words to articulate. So I'm sorry to all the Rook lovers out there. I don't know what else to say. I really don't know where this came from. It is his vibe to me, I guess. And I feel like he'd enjoy them. That's all I got. Similarly, y'all know how Epel always means apple. Well, unfortunately today, he's not gonna get away from it here. However, I am going to spice up this connection by saying that his candy is likely apple pie flavored. Green apple is a very off-putting flavor in my opinion, but it's like the only one that's ever used for candies. So I think trying to make something a bit more cinnamony and juicier and actually apple adjacent suits Epel a bit more. There's a bit of bite to Epel, so his flavor also has to reflect that, even if it's somewhat tangentially. I also think that this better relates to Harveston too, as everyone in his hometown has their own little apple pie recipes, which means that Epel's candy could taste more similar to his specific family's pie recipe, which would be a little terrifying mechanically, but also really cool. Ortho's candy now would taste like motor oil if Ortho could actually eat it, but he can't, so for Idia's sake, it's going to taste like blue raspberry. Fun fact about this flavor, it's completely synthetic. There is no such thing as a blue raspberry, and this flavor doesn't actually derive from any kind of raspberry. According to Wikipedia, blue raspberry is a combination of banana, pineapple, and cherry. Wild, right? Given that Ortho is an artificial intelligence, I figured it made the most sense for Ortho to claim this artificially crafted flavor, as even though it comes from organic elements, like Ortho's consciousness in part is pieced together from his and real Ortho's memories, it's still its own thing, its own combo, and it can stand on its own 2 feet without being tied back by its influences and components, just like Ortho. Plus, it's something Idia would likely be okay with eating since Ortho is going to be sharing it with him, since Ortho, can't actually eat things. Idia, on the other hand, is going to have his candy be Baja Blast flavored. Not sponsored in any way, shape, or form, but it has to be Baja Blast. It has to be. I have no idea what this flavor is made of, even if it claims to be tropical lime, because I really don't know how much lifting the tropical part is doing there. It's still just a very memey gamer drink, and I think that suits Idia to a T. Like, late night league matches accompanied by burritos of questionable quality was a college staple for me, so I may be a little biased in this regard, but I do know the overarching brand is absolutely like a memey gamer drink. While there are newer and probably healthier brands in the gamer ring, in fact, I could probably name a few right now, I still think Baja be blasting, and Idia would be one to keep it that way, so that's the only flavor I can ever envision for him. Moving on to Deosomnia, we're going to start with Malleus, and Malleus is getting candy that is flavored like sour plum, because while Malleus is a delight, he's also a little bit of an acquired taste. I've only had one kind of sour plum candy before, but it was so delicious and tart in a way that's not quite as obnoxious as straight up sour power coated candies, but it was something that a lot of other folks in my group at the time did not like at all. Malleus wants to have friends and connect with people, but the way that he does that is a bit difficult for some folks to understand. So in a way, he can be likened to this type of candy, which makes having his groovy candy flavored this way make sense to me. It's a bit sour, a bit sweet, and Malleus can be seen being both in somewhat predictable ways, and this flavor is a little bit like that. So that's what I've decided to give him. Given Lilia's tastes, I think it would be so funny for his candy to be tomato flavored because for all intents and purposes, his little bat candy just looks like your average everyday sweet. But take a lick and you'll find it's tangy in a very unexpected way. And isn't that just Lilia in a nutshell? He's always popping up in unexpected places and surprising people with all sorts of little pranks and jokes. And I can totally see him using this candy in a prank. Oh, you want some candy, child? Here, let me know what you think. What? It's not sweet? But of course not. It's tomato flavored. That's absolutely something Lilia would do. I mean, this is the same guy who told Sebek to put yogurt on steak to ensure his nutritional intake was optimized as a joke. There is no way he isn't pranking people with these candies. And when he's not, he's enjoying the flavor himself. Silver's candy, though, has got to be cotton candy flavored because Silver's such a head up in the clouds kind of guy, and clouds kind of look like cotton candy, especially in Silver's special magic liminal space. Every time I see this space, it just looks so darn delicious. I just wish I could take a bite out of these clouds. And cotton candy is often either sold in pink or blue colors, kind of like a certain someone's dress who also happens to be someone Silver is based off of, you know? And this flavor is just very sweet, which I also think suits Silver well. He is a sweetheart. He's a soft boy. And if there was anybody who can embody the spirit of cotton candy, it would be Silver. So that's the flavor I'll be giving him here. Sebek now is going to be straight up lime with a couple little poppy rocky candy bits hidden inside his lightning candy. Because this is Sebek Zigvolt, and his candy is literally shaped like a lightning bolt, and his special magic is lightning, so he definitely needs something with a bit of a zing. Lime happens to be a thematically appropriate citrus fruit for this endeavor, and I think it can be really refreshing depending on how much lime versus candy there is here. One of my other favorite sweets to indulge in is candy citrus peels, which are super tasty and also pretty zesty. So that's kind of what I imagine this candy tastes like. Plus, it's got little popping surprises inside to give it that wow factor and keep you on your toes, which is something I think Sebek does well. He's bold, brash, loud, but also has a surprising amount of depth, which I think matches the vibe of this flavor profile. Now then, we have a couple of special folks saved for last because we have a couple of folks that have candy in the game. And the first one of our lovely little guys is going to be Rolo. So Rolo's got a bell candy, and while it's pretty and probably made of honey given its color, I don't think it would have that simple a taste. We do have some contextual evidence for a flavor that would make a lot of sense for Rolo, but that flavor was taken by another contestant in this game for very personal reasons. So instead, what could be better for Rolo's mental health than to eat the smoky goodness that is a s'more? Probably everything. But while reflecting upon Rolo, I kept going back to his fire and then Frollo and his hellfire, and I had the diabolical thought to make Rolo's candy flavor some sort of smoked thing. And what's a nice sweet treat that's dependent upon fire for its unique constitution? S'mores. I guess more specifically it would be toasted marshmallow, but I figure it'd be nice to throw in the rest of the flavors of chocolate and graham crackers to kind of ease Rolo's sorrows a little bit. The only thing connecting him to this flavor is fire, and this isn't the only thing that can be smoky, but it seemed the most fitting to me since I couldn't give him grape. And that is because grape is going to Crowley, because I can't help but feel that this Raven candy just tastes like disappointment, which means it cannot be anything other than grape to me. This is the most disappointing of all of the candy flavors because it reminds me of those yucky cold medicines from childhood. And every time I eat a grape candy, I am so utterly disappointed at the overly synthetic profile. It's just the worst. Like, why is every single kid's medicine synthetic grape or orange? Like, it's only ever one or the other, unless you somehow miraculously find the cherry-flavored Holy Grail. But that apparently only existed on one singular occasion in my memory, because every other cold medicine I was ever given was one of those other two flavors. I get that if medicine tasted like cotton candy, kids might try to drink the whole thing, which would not be great. But even still, couldn't they at least try to make it palatable? No. It's got to be grape. It's got to be the most disgusting liquid on the face of the earth, and it is just such a disappointment every time that my mom would reach into the medicine cabinet, her hand so precariously close to that red bottle, the beautiful cherry elixir of health, only for her to pick the purple sludge one instead. And that just feels like Crowley. So for his candy, he's getting grape. And now I gotta go wash my mouth out, because I could just feel this flavor seeping into my soul, and I hate it. The last person that we are going to talk about today, who is hopefully going to be a palate cleanser for me after the disgustingness that is Crowley's candy, is going to be our #1 bachelor, Kurel. Kurel was recently released on the EN server, so now we have his dog candies. And honestly, I feel like these taste like licorice. I don't know exactly why I get this feeling from these candies, probably because of the coloring. But licorice just seems like one of those flavors that people that like licorice tend to think they're more sophisticated than people that don't like licorice, which is wild because it's just a matter of taste, and that doesn't really impact your sophistication at all. But Kurel to me is a very sophisticated individual. He has this sort of air of maturity around him. I don't think that Kurel is necessarily pretentious himself, but I do think that this overall vibe and mystique and air of sophistication that can kind of come along with licorice just suits his vibe well and is a flavor that I personally enjoy. So now that I'm thinking about licorice and not grapes, I'm having a much better time. Thank you, Kurel. But with that, that is the end of the video because that is all of the candies that have currently been released on the EN server. Did y'all have a good time? I sure hope so. And if you did, please let me know with a comment down below. Do you agree with my thoughts on these flavors, or do you have any other ideas of what they could possibly be? Let me know that as well. You can also like and subscribe to show your support. And before you go, I'd just like to remind you that you're amazing, and I hope you have a wonderful day.